Wednesday, what I'd like to do is just sort of generally summarize what we've gone over this quarter. So already be thinking as we come to Wednesday, things that have stood out to you, themes, maybe some new things that you've noticed, things that have helped you in your study, things about the character of God, the character of Israel as they've been going throughout. We may consider some of those things if we have time on Wednesday. So go ahead and be thinking about those things if you would. So here in Joshua chapter 2 then, chapter 2 opens by Joshua sending 2 spies into Jericho. In the course of events, a native of the city, Rahab, hides the spies. After successfully hiding the spies, Rahab confesses her faith in the Lord. And I've asked the question here, how did she arrive at this conclusion? We'll answer this in just a moment. I did want to go ahead and make one quick aside, and you've probably thought of it as well as you've studied this text through the years. It's often brought up in this text, especially as we come to the New Testament, that, or someone might say something along the lines of, why did God approve of Rahab lying about the spies or on behalf of the spies? After all, she's commended of doing so in the New Testament. What would your answer be to something of that manner, that sort of question or that sort of comment? Anything come to mind?
She was commended for her faith.
Yeah.
Not being justified for lying.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I think that's the main thing that we can point out, and that's an argument that's easily dismantled. So there's a couple of passages we might go to in the New Testament, maybe ones you've thought of. So she is commended in Hebrews chapter 11, for instance, in verse 31. She's commended there for giving the spies, depending on your translation, a friendly welcome, or she welcomed them in peace. James 2 and verse 25 also being a passage contrasting the faith of, or really comparing and bolstering the argument of faith with works with Abraham and Rahab. And some might even go on to say, well, that may be true, but here in this case, it seems that lying was permitted just this once by God. And I don't think that will do. I think we can reconcile and we need to reconcile all of the will of God. And she is not commended here for lying. After all, she is still a Canaanite. She is still a part of this foreign nation. So she does have the beginning beats of having faith in God, the one true God. But that doesn't necessarily mean that she's doing everything by perfect faith as of yet. So we need to think about those things, and I think that's worth considering. So that aside, coming back to our question then, Rahab confesses her faith then, after hiding the spies and after doing that successfully. She confesses her faith. How did she arrive at this conclusion? What did you come up with for that?
I think her showing her faith was letting them know that after she told them what the Lord had done for Israel with the 2 kings, that she wanted to be, that her faith was with them in the Lord.
Yeah, very good. So in very recent history, as they've been wandering in the wilderness, so this is sort of the back half of them wandering in the wilderness, where this is more of the second generation, defeating Sihon and Og, devoting them to destruction or giving them over to destruction. Very good. Going back even further than that, what does she draw upon? Yes, sir.
Egypt, when they left Egypt.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So the Lord dried up the Red Sea. So going this theme of deliverance, God being a deliverer of his people. That's certainly another theme that's drawn upon. And I did want to note again, this is a phrase that will continue to come up, whether it's said of the people of Canaan or whether it's said of the people of Israel as they are disobedient to God. And so the sort of the opposite happens here. The inhabitants of Canaan, this is verse 9, I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the fear of you has fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you. So we remember at this point that this is direct language that ties us back to the Song of Moses in Exodus 15 in verse 15, where because of the deliverance of the Red Sea, which is sort of this first great showing of God's miraculous power, and of course we have the 10 plagues, but this is sort of this massive showing where the whole army of Pharaoh and of Egypt is wiped out. God has delivered us, and the inhabitants of Canaan have melted away. And so all of those things are true, and this is what Rahab builds her faith upon. This sort of goes back to the first comment about Rahab maybe not having a full knowledge of God, but faith, trust, devotion, this is a quote from another author, is based on some, not all knowledge. It is not just a warm, cozy feeling. Faith grows if all in all, out of hearing what God has done for his people. Of course, book of Romans, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. So we can't have faith in God unless we've heard about him and what he's capable of and his character and all of those things. Yes, sir. Did you have something?
I'm just thinking of the Egyptian, that goes back a whole generation. I don't know how old she was, I guess.
Yeah.
This Egyptian deliverance goes back, so, that's interesting. And like you said, that there were many people who believed.
Mm-hmm.
And were afraid, we received later
That's
on
right.
all these people, but they didn't have what we were using, I guess, as the term here, believe.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they have,
Yeah.
believe, and of course, her belief, as we look at this, you were talking about the New Testament, we get our faith. She was getting her faith from what she had heard about God. She believed it to the point that she made actions upon that belief in hiding the spies. So that's a different kind of belief that was going on with all these other people who also believed the story,
Yeah,
but they didn't change their actions,
that's right.
as we see coming up.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Yeah, so that kind of ties us back to James 2 again, doesn't it? Even the demons believe and they tremble, but it's not an active belief. It's not a trusting faith that they have. And so certainly the majority of the Canaanites had that sort of belief, but Rahab is one of the outliers there. That's a great contrast, great point. Anything else there on that? I did want to note just one more thing. Her confession in verse 11 should also remind us of some previous language. And as soon as we heard it, our hearts melted. So again, that phrase, but continuing. And there was no spirit left in any man because of you, for the Lord your God, he is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. So this is language that we've seen recently in our study, back in Deuteronomy 4, and in verse, I believe it's 39. Know therefore today and lay it to your heart that the Lord is God in heaven above and on the earth beneath. There is no other. So Deuteronomy, given to this second generation of Israel, but look and see who is saying this in Joshua 2. It is this pagan prostitute who has more faith than some of Israel has in times past. Not that she is staying in her current condition. She is moving on and she is growing past those pagan practices, and she will continue to do so. But she confesses this faith in the God of heaven and earth. All right, anything further there in Rahab's confession, first 11 verses of chapter 2? All right, well, let's move in to some more of the verses here. Question 4. Rahab starts her confession by fearing the Lord. This proper fear leads her to further ask for mercy based on what? So let's start there. What's her sort of logic and reasoning as to why she should receive mercy? Yes, sir.
Well, she has shown the spies mercy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she would expect that they would show her mercy as well.
That's right. Yeah.
She seals this based on an oath. with God as witness.
Yeah, so, please swear to me by the Lord as I have dealt kindly with you. Does anyone have a different word for kindly there? You may not, and there's maybe a reason for that. The translators did this, but curious if anyone does have a different word. So another good word that we could supplement for kindly is faithfully. Deal kindly with your servant. So look here again at verse 12. I'm going to read down through verse 14. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that as I have dealt kindly or faithfully with you, you also deal kindly with my father's house, and give me a sure sign that you will save alive my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death. And the men said to her, our life for yours, even to death. If you do not tell this business of ours, then when the Lord gives us the land, we will deal kindly, so same word as earlier, and faithfully with you. So that's a different word. So it's, I think the reasoning behind why they don't choose faithfully is because there is such a, it's a slight nuance between the words chosen here, but there is a lot of overlap between the words. So either kindly, faithfully, truthfully is maybe another good word, but all of those things wrapped up in how she has shown favor to these spies, and she is asking for God to be merciful in that same way. So we want to notice that. So then going to the second part of the question then, what did Rahab have to do in order to receive this mercy? So mercy is guaranteed to her on the basis of what? Yes, her silence, but then ultimately when the people come against the city, what is she required to do? Yes.
From the window that she let him down,
Right.
and her family has to stay there.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of moving parts here and a lot of things to consider. So her silence, that is one of the first things mentioned. The scarlet cord that the spies would have escaped from out of the window of her house, and then also she and her entire household would have to remain within the house. And this is something that I did not notice always through the years, but only just recently that I've sort of put this together. Verse 15, then she let them down by a rope, the one that we're talking about, the scarlet cord, through the window, for her house was built into the city wall, so that she lived in the wall. So we all know the story of Jericho. We know that the people marched around the city all those times, and Rahab has a front row seat to that happening. And she has to trust that her house is going to stand amidst all of the other, and she could probably even, no doubt, either see or hear the walls falling down around her, but her house is the only one that stands. Her portion of the wall. What faith. And stay in your house. When all of that's happening, do not flee, do not run. Just a great showing of faith from this woman. And her family as well, trusting in that same sort of faith, it appears to be. And so I think that's something worth noting, especially as we get to the conclusion of this story later on. All right, let's see here. Anything else there on, and I got behind my slides again here, on the faith of Rahab? All right. Well, I could say more there, but let's go ahead and move on to question 5. So getting into chapter 3. Chapter 3 gives details about how the people were to cross over the Jordan River. And some of this has already been prophesied about and talked about. Here are the instructions that you were to follow as you move over the Jordan River. Well, now we're here. We're here at this moment. Who and what were to go out in front of the people, and where were they to be situated during the crossing? So who and what were in front?
Priests and the Ark of the Covenant.
Yes. The priests and the Ark of the Covenant. So in chapters 3 and 4, and this might be a helpful exercise if you underline, if you highlight words, chapters 3 and 4, the Ark of the Covenant, or maybe it just says the Ark, is mentioned 17 times. There's a lot of emphasis given on the Ark here, all right? What did the Ark represent? What was it supposed to represent to the people? God's presence. So what would, let's think about this for a minute. What would the Ark going out in front of the people symbolize to Israel?
God is with them.
God is with them. These are all, what's that?
God is leading them.
God is leading them. These are all themes that we've noticed already throughout the Pentateuch. He is with them. He is guiding them. He is protecting them. He is the one going out and providing these blessings for them and leading the people into the promised land. All right? This is another quote from another author. So the ark, the sign of Yahweh or the Lord's presence among his people, meets us at every turn, reminding us that it is Yahweh himself who leads his people into Canaan, who cuts off flooding waters and holds them back as if it were his hand. The whole affair is Yahweh's feet, and the Israelites, though active, are still primarily spectators. So this, I think, even draws us back to the Red Sea, does it not? Where you have Moses, you have the people, and you have God all in their active roles. So Moses was to hold out his staff over the waters, and what were the people of Israel told to do? They were told to do something, though it was also nothing.
Keep their distance.
Yeah, keep their distance. You stand back and observe the glory of the Lord, the salvation of the Lord, I believe is the exact wording. So they weren't to do anything but just stand back and be in awe of what the Lord is about to do. Here, they are commanded to do more than that, as they were even back in the Red Sea as they went through the waters. We'll get to that here in just a moment. But coming back to our text then, so the Ark of the Covenant is going out in front of the people. At what specific distance was the Ark to go out in front of the people? What does the text tell us?
2,000 cubits.
2,000 cubits. So there's two different suggestions. I'll open it up. Why do you think such a distance? Why is it not, why wouldn't it be just immediately in front of the people that the ark is to lead the people? Yes, sir.
Well, you gotta recognize there's thousands of people here. So it's gotta be far enough out in front where everybody can see it. Now, they're all crowding up on it, anybody see it.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's way out in front, everybody can see it.
Yes. And I think that's a key part of it. So it's not only so that the whole people can follow. Okay, I'm going to skip forward then to the second part of the question. Where were the Levitical priests to be situated during the crossing? Yes, in the middle of the Jordan River. And we'll get to this here in just a moment as well as we see the fulfillment of this. But do you suppose as well that at that distance that the people are following at, if they instead were following just immediately on top of the priests, the whole nation might not be able to see what happens when the heels or the soles of the priest's feet hit the water. Because then it says the water goes up in a great heap. And if they're standing back at a distance, you would be able to see that happening, however that would have happened. So that's maybe another, just a logical reason as to why this is happening. Maybe one other reason to consider. So the ark, when it was situated in the tabernacle, was placed where?
The holiest of holies.
Yeah, the holy place, the most holy place. Who was the only one permitted to go in? The high priest. Once a year, the high priest was permitted to go in. So this wasn't just a regular occurrence for him. So there is this, again, amidst other things, this note of separation and holiness between God and his people, even the high priest himself. So perhaps, again, there is this distance to represent, I am God, I am holy, and that there is, again, this separation. Though his people are holy, there is still this gap between him and his people. Maybe that's another reason, perhaps. Verse 10, I wanted to note a couple of verses here. Verse 10 of chapter 3. And Joshua said, "Here is how you shall know that the living God is among you, and that he will without fail drive out from before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, and the Jebusites." And I love that phrase. Maybe you have a different one. But the Lord will without fail. Building more confidence. And they should have great confidence already from the kings they've defeated, from the Red Sea, all these things that have been drummed up again in their history. But here again, they get this promise, without fail. Take notice also in backing up to verse 7, the Lord said to Joshua, "Today I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with you." This was similar language that was given to Moses when certain miracles were done to exalt him to this prominent position. And so God is giving Joshua this same promise, and it's going to begin with the crossing of the Jordan. And Joshua has minimal participation, maybe on a physical plane when we're looking at this, but he still has a role. But God tells Joshua, it is through this miracle and through what's about to happen that I'm going to exalt you as leader of my people. I want to notice also, this is in the Waldron material, I believe, a little bit. When does, or the text tells us, when this crossing took place? That is, in terms of the time of year that the crossing was. What time of year was it? And what were the circumstances surrounding the crossing? During the harvest, right? Yes, sir.
Well, this was the time of the year when the Jordan was in flood stage.
Yeah.
Run up all over the banks of the river, so it wasn't just a little brook flowing down the valley at this point. It
Yeah.
was a raging river.
Yeah, exactly. And don't you think as well that this was purposeful by God? God could have let them cross the river at any point, but he has purposefully and providentially led them to this moment on this specific day of the year and the time of the year when the waters are at their highest. It's a raging river. It's not a babbling brook, as we might say. God is going to show his full power, and there's going to be no doubt that Joshua is exalted and that the Lord, he is still God. You do some further reading just about sort of the geography and the landscape of the Jordan River and the Jordan Valley in general. So during this time of the year and with the waters, how they were at this time, the water probably would have been a mile wide, something like that. Looking at modern day, just how that happens during this time of the year. And you also go into that portion of the Jordan Valley, and it's got jungle growth, it's got brush, it has all sorts of obstacles to navigate through. And God is choosing not only just this time of the year, but this is the place through which you're going to cross. All these things that it would be, and let's go back and notice again, the Jordan River has been crossed by the people already, but it's only been 2 of them. 2 spies have gotten across. It's a lot easier for 2 spies, and I say easier, it's probably still somewhat difficult. They had to find a place. But you talk about millions of people trying to cross. That's going to be a lot more difficult. Impossible, maybe we might even say. But God, through God, all things are possible, and that's what we're going to see here. they might even be, this might even be an occasion, if the people aren't careful, to be like their forefathers, where they're saying, why are we waiting around all this time? The waters are continuing to rise. It is going to be impossible for us to cross at a point. Beginning to doubt Joshua's leadership, beginning to doubt God's promises and his leadership. But we don't get any of that in the text. They wait patiently, faithfully, before they are about to cross. And God is going to lead his people over. All right, anything else there on the instructions about crossing the Jordan River before we actually get to the event? All right, well, let's look at question 6 then. So this is something, once more, that has already been talked about in Deuteronomy specifically. Rather recently, we've talked about this. When all the people passed over the Jordan, Joshua commands 12 men, one from each tribe, to take a stone from the midst of the Jordan and establish them for a memorial. What were these stones meant to teach? And I did want to pause here, and I wanted to sort of amend something that I said in an earlier class in Deuteronomy. We suggested that these stones were large enough for the whole law to be written upon them. We'll get to that here in just a moment, and that is true. So they would have had to have been fairly large stones, not just little, skipping stones. But I think I said something along the lines of maybe all 12 men helped carry one stone each, and that's not what we see from the text. They were large enough for the whole law to be written upon them, but also small enough to where each man was able to carry one stone individually. So I wanted to make that correction and make that clear as we go forward. But with those stones, not only as a memorial, but also as the law was written upon them, what were these stones meant to teach future generations?
How God dried up the river.
Yeah. So how he dried up the river. What else is stressed in this teaching?
But when the children came across, they were fast. And they would tell them that God had dried up the river because
Yeah. How do you suppose, and I think we get this sense from the text, how was this to be taught? If you can sort of read my mind. Yes, sir.
Well, it's supposed to be passed on from generation to generation. And when you saw the stones, that was an opportunity and a chance to teach. Not just, these stones are here because we crossed the Jordan.
Yeah. You
get the fullness, the full story of what happened there that day.
Yeah. That's right. So they do tell a story, don't they? They are meant to tell a story when, and by the way, Joshua says this will happen. When your son asks you, this will happen. Here is how you ought to answer them. Maybe not verbatim. You don't just have to treat this as sort of a repetitious sort of thing where you say the same thing over and over again. But something along these lines where you are impressing upon your children certain things about God. We're not just talking about a river here, are we? We're talking about the power of God, the character of God, the promises of God. So I think this can remind, so for instance, verse 7 of chapter 4, then you shall tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the people of Israel a memorial forever. A memorial of the covenant made between God and Israel. Maybe come back to that thought here in just a moment. Verse 23, for the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan for you until you passed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea. So drawing back on that story again, and that story of deliverance which he dried up for us until we passed over. Verse 24, so that all the peoples of the earth may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty, that you may fear the Lord your God forever. So at the end of all this, this is meant to teach a proper fear of the Lord to other nations, and also, I think we can infer from this that the people are to have a proper fear of the Lord, a reverence for the Lord. That they not melt in the face of these other nations, but they have confidence in the Lord and what He has done while also still fearing Him. I think this section also stresses, for instance, it stresses the goodness of God. This brings us back to passages like Deuteronomy 8, where it talks about when you enter into the land, be sure that you are diligent in teaching, that you don't forget the Lord and all that you inherit and all the promises you inherit. One fellow put it this way: perhaps the greatest enemy of faith is forgetfulness above all else. Infidelity or unfaithfulness to God may come because we forget His rich blessings and His mighty works. These stones teach us those things. I think that's right. So the greatest enemy of faith, or at least one of the greatest enemies, is forgetfulness. Because we're not teaching these things. We're not studying these things. We're not remembering these things. And this is where I want to circle back to verse 7. This is to be a memorial for the people forever. Do we have a memorial today? What memorial do we observe? The Lord's Supper.
In our
Yeah.
assembly on Sunday, the Lord's Supper. But I was going to also mention, if you're lucky enough to go to Washington and you see the Lincoln Memorial, you don't just see the Lincoln Memorial, you see Lincoln sitting on a chair inside. It's not just the guy sitting on a chair. There are thousands and thousands of stories that go into that. When you see the Vietnam War Memorial, it's not just that we were in a war in a foreign land. There are thousands and thousands of stories. 50,000 of them printed on that wall. So when we see Joshua commanding the children to take these 12 stones, that's what that's going to be to them. It's going to be something they're going to be looked at. There will be thousands of stories surrounding that memorial. And they're supposed to teach these stories to their children, not just the fact that they crossed the river, but how they got there. How they were delivered from Egypt. Everything that has happened to them up to this point is part of that story.
I think that, and you bring up a good point. It reminds me of this also. The Lord could have said 12. He could have said any amount of men, first of all. But he could have given charge to the Levites or the priests, as they were so often given prominent leadership in doing this thing. I think there is great wisdom in saying one man from each tribe of my people will do this, so that future generations could look back and say, hey, remember when great granddad or so-and-so laid that stone. This is what that is meant to teach, and we are tied to that story. We still have this spiritual heritage of faith in this same God, and this is how we can please Him, and this is what He has done for us. So I think that's a great point. But coming back to this idea of a memorial, I do think we need to be careful in how we answer questions about the Lord's Supper, for instance, application today. So our children ask us, or maybe even just ones that are unfamiliar with what we're doing, we don't need to just brush off those questions and saying, well, this represents, the fruit of the vine represents Christ's blood, and the bread represents Christ's body, and we're sort of flippant with that, and we're just be quiet. If questions are asked, maybe you can't answer all of them sitting there in the pew at that very moment, but take the time to bring that up later and just start introducing these very grand ideas about what those things represent. Because this memorial is also, what we observe, represents a covenant, the blood of the new covenant that is. So we need to be very careful in showing proper reverence and showing proper fear of the Lord. All right, anything else there on this question? Yes, sir.
You're exactly right, how forgetful we are, and you see that a number of times throughout the scriptures, Old Testament. You forget, and we get complacent. And I think that's the reason for the Lord's Supper on the first day of every week. So the Lord don't want us to forget what He's done for us, just where we were at without His sacrifice.
Yeah, and we do that collectively, don't we? And I think there's great wisdom in that as well. As a people, we do that. Yes, sir.
He follows on verse 9, what we're doing here, putting some stone where the priest's feet were, right? And then the water's going to cover that up.
Yeah.
Not much is said about it. It's just a one sentence, I guess. I didn't know if you had any thoughts, or if anybody has any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I guess just my initial thought is, so this is the exact place where, as the priests were standing here, all the people were able to cross over, and it's sort of a, I don't know, a physical marker of this. This is a tangible, real thing that happened, showing the providence of God. Maybe I'm not wording that exactly in the best way. But those are some thoughts that come to mind. But I think there is great emphasis placed on just all of these physical markers of God's deliverance and providence. Yes, sir.
One of the things too, to talk about people that thing, but it also shows God spoke to the promises He made to Abraham hundreds of years before.
Yes. Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's a thing we see continually, isn't it? Yeah. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Those promises are being fulfilled. Very good.
It's been on the west side and the east side too.
On the, I'm sorry, the stones, you mean? Yeah, well, I guess from the text again, and again, this is another thing to note. These are not the only stones that are laid in the book of Joshua. So there's going to be a lot of stones laid down as memorials, but this is sort of the first one. But yeah, I mean, what we see there, verse 9 again, in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant had stood, they are to this day. So I guess it would have been just in sort of just a central location, wherever that was, in the Jordan River. I didn't know if anyone had any other thoughts there, but that does seem to be how it reads here. Because there will be other stones that are placed, I think, on both those sides of the river. But here, this is where those stones are placed. Let me see if I had anything else on that, just to be sure. Okay. Any other comments, questions on question 6 here? All right. Well, we've got about 5 minutes. I think we can do our best to answer this last question on this lesson. Or back up here. The people came up out of the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, marking the new year, that is the new year in the Jewish calendar. What is supposed to take place on the 14th day of the first month of each year? And I've given you several references to look at that. What's to take place on that day? The Passover. What is the Passover meant to represent? What is it to bring to mind, to remembrance? Where does this bring us all the way back to in Israel's history? To Egypt. And specifically, what part of Egypt? Or what pivotal moment? Yeah. Yeah.
That night, the first one were killed.
Mm-hmm.
Leave Egypt after that.
Yes. So this Passover feast meant to represent several things and bring to remembrance several things. God's deliverance, as the angel of death passed over those houses that had put the blood up on the doors, and giving them that proper deliverance as given by the Lord. Chapter 4 and verse 19 of Joshua here, they came up out of the Jordan on the first day of the 10th month. We go back to Exodus 12, verses 2 and 3 there. So our verse in chapter 4 and verse 19 and Exodus 12, verses 2 and 3. This was the same day, to the day, 40 years prior, the people of Israel had begun to prepare for going out of Egypt by setting apart the Passover lamb. So they had not yet partaken of this Passover supper yet, but they had begun preparations. So I think, again, we see the wisdom and the careful consideration of the Lord. It's this exact day, but I mean, the river and all those things considered to show his glory and his power, but also so that the very first prominent thing they do when they enter into the land is they partake of this Passover supper that they had partaken of, the previous generation had partaken of 40 years prior. And there might have even been some, those that were 19 and younger, that would have remembered stories from their fathers and mothers and grandparents about that particular first Passover supper. So I think there are, just very quickly, notice how the Lord has led them in such a way that, again, one of the first things they do points them to deliverance, points them back to deliverance, points them back to Egypt. But I think it also points them forward, and it points us forward to Christ, who delivers us in the way that fulfills all of it, delivers us from sin, because he is our Passover lamb. So Israel had been a slave. Now Israel was an heir of the promise, as the New Testament, Romans and Galatians and other places talk about that. We may even bring some of that into the next lesson. Any final comments, questions on this text this morning? All right, well, thank you for your attention this morning. We will finish this quarter with lesson 25 on Wednesday, and again, we may just think about the entire quarter as a whole if we have time, but please go ahead and prepare for that. Thank you.